I spent the second night of Hanukkah with Natalie Portman, who I've known since college. One of the things I did was basically like this big Excel spreadsheet where I would identify any situation where I tilted, like what the trigger was, how I reacted, and then try to figure out, okay, next time something like this happens, what am I going to do? Like try to actually think through. You have to have a balance between theory and practice.
Yeah.
Just like in psychology, I think you
yeah.
need to have a balance between theory and practice.
Welcome back, Wizards, legends of the game. The conversation I'm bringing you today is one with Maria Konnikova. I was honored to be able to have Maria on the show. I've been a fan of hers for a very long time. I have followed her since her first book, Mastermind, and I was very excited to sit down and talk with her. So we had a good conversation about her books. We did not discuss her second book, The Confidence Game, but we did talk about Mastermind and her latest book, The Biggest Bluff, and how she goes from zero to hero in the poker world, how she went from knowing absolutely nothing to being a professional poker player. So that's pretty fascinating. I won't delay it any longer. Without further ado, Maria Konnikova.
Sherlock Holmes is awesome.
Sherlock Holmes is awesome. I'm a big fan of Sherlock Holmes.
Just helping you out with a starting point.
It's fascinating because I now have been thinking about that book more. So I work in performance coaching now. I don't know if you're familiar with that at all.
Yeah.
But so I work a lot with people on like being present and being mindful. And so, and lately I've been reading a lot more about like creativity and the creative process and all of that. And then your book came to mind in the process of thinking about that. And I was like, there's actually like a lot of common threads here. I don't know how much you have any interest in talking about that book.
Yeah, anything. Absolutely.
What was sort of like the inspiration for that book? Because I think I'm seeing it with fresh eyes right now.
Yeah. So the funny thing is, Mastermind isn't the only one of my books that came from an article. Everything else came from like something in the air. The article had some inspiration. So at the time, I was still in grad school. So I was getting my PhD in psychology, working with Walter Mischel, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago. But for people who don't know, he's the marshmallow guy.
Okay.
So the man responsible for those famous marshmallow kids.
Didn't those fail reproduction?
No, they did not.
Okay.
Yeah, that was there was one sensational article that tried to say that it didn't reproduce, and yes, they did not reproduce those findings, but because they did not replicate the experiment properly.
Fair.
So yeah, those are some of. I will stake my reputation on those findings. Like
oh my gosh,
they're incredibly solid.
Okay.
And all of the things that they didn't control for were things that Walter had known in advance would be problems because of prior research, and so he made sure to control for things because in that failed replication, they were like, oh, well, there were trust issues and like socioeconomic stuff. And Walter was like, yeah, no shit. I knew that. So like we established trust over a year with these kids first. There were no socioeconomic differences. Like we know
so
that
for those who don't, sorry, because for those who don't know, explain the marshmallow test.
Yeah. So this was the very famous study where it's called the Bing study because it took place at Bing Nursery School at Stanford University. And the idea is you put a marshmallow in front of a kid. And by the way, it's called the marshmallow study, but they used all sorts of treats because they wanted something that the kids liked.
Sure, that's fair.
And you tell the kid, you can eat it now.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave the room. Or if you wait until I come back, then you'll get 2 marshmallows or cookies or whatever it is, or 2 bags of M&Ms or whatever it is. You get much more if you can wait. But here's a bell. If you ever want to eat it, just press the bell and eat the thing, and it's fine. And it turns out that the length of time that children were able to wait, and they were 3-4 years old, so just to get that age, that length of time, delay of gratification, correlated to all sorts of outcomes later in life that were much more positive. And so they are still following the Bing kids. I had a chance to work with them when I was working. I was his final grad student, so I was kind of the end of the end of the line there. But he has collaborators who are still following them.
Wow.
So like the Bing study is not dead, but they followed up, when they were teenagers, when they were in their 20s, in their 30s, in their 40s, and they found that the length of time correlated with higher SAT scores, better GPAs, less drug convictions, better happiness, like better life outcomes, just all around.
How
all
many
sorts of
people
good things.
do they do it with?
So that's a tricky question because there's the number originally and then the number that, some dropped out of the follow-ups.
Okay.
But it's a good number.
Okay. Gotcha.
But and the reason I'm not giving you a specific number is I honestly don't remember.
Yeah.
So I don't want to say the
Statistically
wrong
relevant,
one.
though.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there are also trajectories that people didn't talk about that I found really interesting. Like there were people who were high in delayed gratification and then it was a fluke. They dropped off and their outcomes were no better than the people who didn't do well. And then there were people who didn't do well, but who learned to actually delay gratification later in life, and their outcomes went up.
Yeah.
And so to me, like those are much more interesting trajectories.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. So anyways, you're working at
So I'm working with Walter. I'm in grad school, and I know that I want to be a writer. So prior to grad school, I was working in television as a TV producer.
Okay.
And writing as well. And I went to grad school because I love the human mind.
Yeah.
I wanted to just be in an academic environment again because it was an opportunity to really stimulate myself. And I thought, this is my last chance to kind of be able to do something like that. And I told Walter when I was applying that I didn't want to go into academia, which is a huge no-no.
Yeah.
You can't do that. I was like, I want to be a writer, but I really want to work with you. And he's like, yeah, sure, let's do it.
Awesome.
And he's like, I wouldn't go into academia these days too. Academia sucks. It's like, I'm lucky when I made my career, like that I was able to do it the way I wanted to. But these days, I'm totally with you.
Yeah.
So I got very, very lucky with that. And so I was freelancing as I was in grad school.
Okay.
So I was doing my research. I was doing my own work. And also, doing some freelance writing.
Sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, but I didn't have to publish academic stuff because I didn't care about that.
Yeah, that's fair.
So it was, so it's kind of, that was the trade-off. But I don't know if workaholic is the right word, but I kind of am.
You enjoy working.
I
Yeah,
always,
yeah.
I'm a hard worker.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. You like delayed gratification.
Yeah.
Infinite delayed gratification forever. No, I'm just kidding.
So I was doing a recurring column for Scientific American at some point, and they had asked me to do something about mindfulness. And this was before mindfulness was a buzzword.
Yeah.
Right. So now we're talking 2009.
I think you have to define
2010
it in the book, which would probably not have to be done today.
Right, exactly,
I think I haven't read it in a while, but I remember it being defined. Mindfulness is sort of this.
Exactly. So it's no longer right now I say mindfulness, people are like, yeah, no shit. And why are you writing a book about it? But back then it was something that people knew in academia or in Buddhism.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But not it wasn't mainstream.
It wasn't new.
Yeah, it
certainly
was
not new.
No. It was thousands of years old.
Yeah.
I discovered this new thing called mindfulness. But
I'm going to start saying in this book, Maria introduces the concept.
The concept of mindfulness. Yeah, exactly. So I was, whenever I write, I always try to think of how to illustrate something for people who don't know this area at all. So good analogies, examples, metaphors, something that will bring it all to life.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to think, how do you really talk about mindfulness? And I didn't want to go into Buddhism. I didn't want to make it religious.
Too esoteric.
Yeah, exactly. And all of a sudden, it was totally random. I just thought of the scene from Sherlock Holmes where Holmes asks Watson, how many steps lead up to 221B Baker Street? And Watson doesn't know.
Yeah.
And then Holmes says, well, that's the difference between us. You only see, I both see and observe. And I was like, that's mindfulness. And I hadn't reread the Holmes story since I was little.
Yeah.
So I was like, let me pull this up.
That's amazing.
So I found the book, read the story, and I was like, this is perfect. This scene is exactly how little me remembers it. It's a perfect illustration of mindfulness, which is mindlessness versus mindfulness is the difference between only seeing and both seeing and observing. And then, so I wrote the article, and it just did ridiculously well. It was the most popular thing that I ever wrote.
Where was it written?
Scientific American.
Okay.
And then I started, and I loved the story. I was like, oh, this is actually really good. So I started rereading Conan Doyle.
Through that lens,
well, not even through that lens. I was like, I want to reread the Sherlock Holmes stories. Like, these are pretty damn good. And I started rereading it, and I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like, this is a treasure trove of psychological insight, which makes all sorts of sense because Conan Doyle was a doctor.
Yeah, right.
He was trained in this. But fiction is often very much ahead of academic psychology,
Sure.
because they don't have to run studies. They just observe human nature and write about it, right? So a lot of the insights were incredibly relevant and like things that people were working on today that were written 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Because, he was just a very keen observer of humanity. And so I started writing more articles kind of through that Sherlock Holmes lens. And I was like, this is a book.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it became a book.
It's fascinating too, the comment on fiction, because I think it points to an interesting distinction between authors too, where when you're writing fiction, you're going inside out and sort of your description of people in the world and things like that. Whereas I think some areas where, academia or the science, especially in psychology, it's so outward in that in many times it seems to have sort of missed the mark. And so it's just interesting to think about why that would be the case, that like this, which is mindfulness itself, right? This sort of outside. Well, I've been getting more and more into. Are you familiar with Ian McGillicrest?
Yeah.
So I've been reading more and more of his stuff, and it's like that he's talked a lot about the difference between the hemispheres.
Yeah, he has some great insights into creativity.
Yeah. And his big distinction is it is very outward. The difference between those could be almost completely impossible to capture without the sort of outward.
Yeah.
Like inside out perspective on like what it is to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've always argued that the best novelists, the best poets are more novelists, but sometimes poets are the best psychologists.
Yeah.
Because in order to be a truly great novelist, in order to write great fiction that stands the test of time, you have to be such a keen observer of human nature, and you have to really pay attention to the world in a way that allows you to capture all of this nuance and this whole range of humanity. So the column that I wrote for Scientific American was called Literally Psyched, because that was my name, because it was on the intersection of literature and psychology.
Oh, man.
And I loved it. I love doing it. And I kind of miss it. Sometimes I think, maybe I should write about that kind of stuff again, because it would always be something from fiction and then psychology, and I would tie them together.
There's a quote I heard sometime that was like, if you really want to, I think Paul Bloom was talking about it. I don't know if this was an original Paul Bloom quote or he was referencing somebody, but he was saying his recommendations were, or someone else's that he was referencing, was if you really want to learn about like living a life, you should read literature. Like, you know what I mean? And if you want to like live a better life, like psychology has a lot of like descriptive insights, but living knowing how to live a full life and living.
Paul and I definitely agree on that. We agree on a lot of things. I love him.
Yeah.
He is a wonderful person and wonderful psychologist.
Yeah.
So big endorsement for him. I think I've blurbed at least one of his books, possibly two.
Yeah. Which books? I'm curious.
I definitely blurbed the empathy one, or I actually wrote about. I don't remember which ones I blurbed and which ones I reviewed, but I think Against Empathy I blurbed. I'm not sure. Sorry, Paul. I don't remember.
Oh man, I love Against Empathy though.
But he's wonderful.
Yeah.
And I love, he is someone with whom I don't always agree. But I can always disagree very respectfully with him. He's very good at arguing.
Yes.
Which is wonderful. It's such a great quality. I don't want to agree with everyone all the time, but I want to.
I want to disagree with everyone all the time. That's my problem.
I wrote this column, and one of my big recommendations for anyone listening to this, or whether you're a psychologist or a poker player or just someone who likes to listen to podcasts, read fiction.
Yeah.
I get so mad when people are like, oh, I don't read fiction. It's a waste of time. Like, are you kidding me? I'm sorry. And I know I write nonfiction, so like read me too. But read fiction.
You're that's funny. You would hate 21-year-old me. That was that guy. Like, fiction, what a waste of time. Yeah. And now I feel the lack of it in my life.
I wouldn't hate you. I would just try to show you the error of your life.
Which is funny because I was a Sherlock Holmes fanatic even at that age.
Yeah.
Like, I was such a fanatic. And in my view, like when I was younger, it was like this person would never have been reading fiction, so I'm not going to read fiction. Like that's literally how I felt.
But that's
like,
so not true.
I know, I agree.
Holmes reads a lot of fiction.
Yeah, and what's funny is like modern interpretations of the character, like if you watch like House or something like that, they all have these like ways of digesting things where like House is playing video games or something like that, which I find interesting. But do you find, to kind of bring this back to poker related, because talking about this whole thing of human nature, because one of the things that tilts me, if you will, is when people talk about like, oh, like psychology in poker and its relevance. And for me, I think what that used to bring to mind is like, if you study psychology, I think there's, and you'll try to hear the nuance of what I'm saying, very few insights that'd be relevant to poker, just like psychology as a whole. Like, again, from the sort of like top-down description of people. But if you think about psychology from, again, the inside out, like of what it feels like to be a person, sort of how people are processing information, I think there's a ton of insights to be had in poker. Have you found that like you're thinking about what it's like to be a person, you know what I mean, and like modeling other minds, like, do you feel it gives you an edge in poker?
Oh, absolutely. But I actually think that both things do.
Yeah.
So I don't quite agree.
Yeah.
Let's disagree.
Yeah.
That it's only kind of what it means to be a person.
Yeah.
I actually think the fact that I studied cognitive psychology, that I studied decision making, risky decision making, heuristics, biases, like how people fuck up.
Yeah, sure.
And that I studied it at a very high level. That I mean, that's my PhD.
You're right.
You know,
what is
my
risky?
dissertation is in risky decision making.
Okay. So, yep.
So I think that really helps me understand what's going on and put a vocabulary on it. And I'm a firm believer that knowing how to precisely name something and how to precisely identify concepts helps you understand it and helps you process it. And that otherwise it's just fuzzy thinking, right? So I think that I have, I think I definitely have an edge there in understanding what's going on. Now, what you were saying, the inside kind of out, which is also tremendously helpful. I think that is something that I actually developed more in poker because I could understand what was happening to me.
Sure.
I could describe it. I knew exactly, what was going on, and I couldn't do anything about it.
Sure,
right?
sure.
Because like you're in the moment, you're in a hot situation, right? Poker's like one big marshmallow test. Where you have the hot stimulus and you have to. And there, the lights are on you. Metaphoric, sometimes literal.
Literally,
but, But you have to make decisions and you have to manage your emotions and you have to do all of these things simultaneously while executing poker strategy at a high level. And that's hard.
Yeah.
And I found myself, I was making all of those mistakes I know about in theory. I was making them in practice. And I was like, oh, Maria, I can see myself like falling for this fallacy or like this incorrect way of thinking. And I'm like, yeah, fuck it, I'm gonna do it anyway.
Yeah, it just feels too good. Like it's just
So it's very funny.
I guess this is kind of what I mean though, because like when you have, if not talking about psychology, we can even talk poker theory. Like you can have, when I was first getting into poker, right, like very dove into like the theory, solvers, all of it, like super engrossed in it. And how much that translated to my ability to play was actually pretty little. Like, you know what I mean? Like at a pretty low level. And I guess this is what I mean. Obviously, like having, now, once I turned on sort of like actually conceptualizing things less and like stopped living in the abstract when I was playing and it was like living more in just like this moment that I was playing in this particular hand and this, then all of that like theoretical knowledge really came to my aid. But I guess I view this in the same lens of psychology where it's like, like if it's,
yeah, I mean, I think you need a mix of everything, right?
Yeah.
Like the problem with academic psychology, but I do think it's a problem, is that it's all very theoretical, not applied.
Yeah.
There is applied psych, obviously.
Yeah.
But for the most part, you're doing lab studies,
I
had, my studies on risky decision making. Some were run in person, some were done online. Most were done online because at the end of the day, I had thousands of subjects.
Right.
And it's that's
easier.
You get those. Well, you get more representative samples than staying within Columbia.
Sure. That's fair. Yeah.
Right. So you have all of these people making decisions, and kind of you're getting your data from that. but they're not. And we had them play games,
Yeah.
right? So we actually, I did my best to make it as applied as possible.
Yeah, yeah.
I was talking about, risky decision making. We had a stock market game, right? Like, so
Yeah,
they were
yeah,
actually
yeah,
like
yeah.
picking bonds and stocks, and they were getting rewarded based on how they did. Like
Oh,
their
nice.
portfolio mattered.
Yeah.
So I did my best, right,
Yeah,
to
yeah.
have rewards, to have the right reinforcements, to have
Yeah.
it translate to the real world. But it's still not the real world,
Yeah.
right? As good as I can do, and
Yeah.
I probably could do better today because I just have them play poker.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I just didn't realize that
Yeah.
that was that
Such
was
a
an
good
option.
and-
Yeah,
you know.
exactly. But as much as I tried, because I was very aware of a lot of the problems in psychology studies where
Yeah.
there's limited ability to go beyond the lab,
Yeah.
because when you start doing that, it turns out there are all these confounding things. But even still, which is why, by the way, the marshmallow study is so cool.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
like
Yeah. 'Cause
that's like very
You're just monitoring their lives.
exactly.
Like you're just,
It's lab but not lab.
Yeah. For
right.
sure.
But it's still the case that when you're in the heat of the moment, like,
Yeah.
and it's really the heat of the moment, not a lab study. There's only so much you can do, and so to me, it's kind of like when you study with solvers, or
Yeah.
try to read up on theory and
Yeah.
study spots and figure this out. You have to have a balance between theory and practice.
Yeah.
Just like in psychology, I think you
Yeah.
need to have a balance between theory and practice. And it turns out that poker was my practice, right?
Yeah,
That was my real life psych lab, where all of these things that I'd been studying for so many years came alive. And I think I started understanding a lot of those concepts on a deeper level, but I already studied, right? I'd worked with the solvers.
Sure.
And so I think that gave me a huge edge. But when I was just starting to learn poker, my two coaches, Eric Seidel, obviously my main coach, and Phil Galfond,
Okay.
my second main coach,
It's a powerful
we're
team.
we're very clear with me that I needed to get hands in.
Yeah.
And that I could run, the Sims, and
Yeah.
I could, read all of this stuff and bone up on the theory,
Yeah.
but that I had to get hands in. So I'm from New York.
Yeah.
No online poker.
Yeah.
And even then, I refused to do anything shady or gray
Yeah,
area because my reputation was
sure.
way too important. So I would, multiple days a week, go to New Jersey, like
Oh,
actually
wow.
get on the PATH train, like go across the river, sit in a cafe, and play online poker.
Yeah.
Because even though I didn't want to, I was
Yeah.
like, but I don't want to play online. Like I want
Yeah.
to play live.
Yeah.
They were like, no, you have to.
Yeah.
Like that's your practice. You need to get those hands in before you play live. And that was so important to me, because you can't solidify the concepts until you
Yeah.
repeat them, until you do them, until you live them.
Yeah.
And it's also, and you have to do it both online and live if
Yeah,
you want to
yeah,
play
yeah.
live. Because it's so funny. I've played with amazing online players and crushed them.
Yeah.
Because
They can't play live.
they can't play live.
They can't. Yeah.
And it wasn't, they're much better than me. Like,
No,
I'm not
yeah.
trying to be like, oh, and I outplayed
No,
them.
no.
I did outplay them.
Yeah.
But because they were just giving off so much that they didn't realize.
Yeah.
And I'm not like, I think tells are important, but I think that theory and solvers are much more important than tells. Right. But
Yeah.
they just like, because they were uncomfortable.
I think too, players make a lot of mistakes when you switch. I think really good players underestimate their ability to start thinking in absolutes live.
Yeah.
Right. So like there's this something about being in front of a person and like in a physical environment that I think really prones you to just thinking in absolutes, where you're just like, I need to be right. Like I think they have one of these parts of their range, and I need to act as though it's one of them.
Right.
And so I think there's things like that online players underestimate. There's something about being able to like multiplayer table and like get volume that just makes you feel intuitively like this is an EV game, like I'm playing over time.
Right.
But when you're live and it's like I want to money,
especially in tournaments.
yeah, especially in tournaments,
and I'm a tournament player.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
That's what.
then you're there. So I think that's a big thing too. Is like I think there's just a ton of experience that comes with just not, and it's just like you're like. It's amazing because like living it, I was just thinking while you were talking about the value of getting hands, because all parts of your brain need to be able to connect with this information. And when you're just studying it or just seeing it, your intuition is just like you sit down to play and all of the intuitive parts of you that haven't studied it are like, this is right. And they're just screaming at you like, we don't want to put in the money here or like whatever. And so it's like you have to build that intuition. And for live players who, for online players who come and sit live, again, I think they really underestimate this. and like what it feels like to be in front of somebody. And then just also like have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? And I think they overestimate people, they underestimate people, and there's all sorts of mistakes that get made live because they just don't have the experience playing live. It's a big thing.
Yeah.
You see people like great players who are 3-betting out of the big blind against a fish who's just like never folding to a 3-bet. You know what I mean? Just like simple things like this, right?
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely. And I also, you know, it's one of these things where you can also extract more value.
Yeah.
Because I was like, this is a theory heavy player who is going to call me here 75% of the time. So like, let's go for it. And like, let's overbet. And if they roll their 75%, they're going to call me, even though a live player would be like, she is never bluffing here.
Yeah, well, they've never seen an overbet before, so that's part of it too.
maybe.
Yeah. No. But...
So, and I was like, fingers crossed, roll your 75%.
And it's the
but
same.
That's why it's important to understand the theory too.
Yeah,
right?
it is. I mean, it is. I mean, because, I mean, there's a million things. I think people overestimate their ability to implore theory as well, to actually do it, to like actually know the spot, know what to do.
Yeah.
But then the other thing is like they will be we both know Kevin Rabichow, and we were talking about a live.
Hi Kevin, I love you.
Yes. We were both we worked together in coaching some people, and so and one of the funniest things he said to me one time when a guy was playing live and choosing a river sizing with like the nuts, and the guy was trying to pick like an overbet size, and Kevin was like, well, it's probably best to not pick a size that this player's never seen in their life. Yeah. Like if you're going to pick a size to get paid, you don't want to pick a size. And it's like things like that. You have people who come in, you know what I mean? Like,
so it's so funny that you say that because Kevin, so I recently wrote an article for The Atlantic on AI and poker.
Okay, perfect.
And for that, I actually played heads up against Slumbot and against GTO Wizard.
Okay.
Ruse AI.
Ruse AI,
to kind of see how I would do. And Kevin coached me a little bit for that to try to like tell me how to beat the bots, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that he told me is try to pick sizes that they're not used to.
Yeah.
Like,
it's the same exact idea.
The programming, but it's the opposite, right?
Yeah.
Because this isn't a human. Like, don't pick the sizes they're not used to if you want to get
value.
called.
Yeah, if you want,
But here, so it was actually the same thing.
It's the same thing. Yeah.
He said, pick sizes that they don't know how to respond well to.
Yeah. Especially Slumbot.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially Slumbot.
Yeah.
And I mean, after like Kevin just gave me like a few tips and like I crushed Slumbot and I was like, I am the best. And then I played GTO Wizard and I was like, I am not the best.
I am not. It's amazing. Yeah.
But I did okay.
Yeah. That whole area is fascinating because Kevin and I were both involved in the Ruse project. And so like getting more and more into AI and the differences between them and the ways that it's fascinating to see. It shocks people the degree to which like Ruse beats Slumbot in their heads up match, for example.
Oh, absolutely. It is totally crazy. And I knew I was going to lose when I played because like by definition I'm going to lose, right? Because I'm playing against their perfect, like their idea.
Well, and they can solve for almost any size.
Exactly.
So like you're picking a size, Ruse can be like, no, I can solve instantly for that size.
So I knew I was going to lose because like it's built in that. But the idea was to try not to lose by a lot. And to try to lose by a size that was.
How many hands did you play?
So I played the same. So we tried to set it up so that it would mimic Slumbot as much as possible. Okay. So I set up the stack depths to be the same as Slumbot, and I think I don't actually remember, around 1,000, something like that. Because I
know
was
what your
also
win rate
limited.
Was? I'm just so curious. Against Ruse?
Against Ruse, I don't know. I don't remember, but it was. We have a text history with Kevin where he said it wasn't bad.
I'm just so curious to see.
It was a heads up. I wrote about it and I have it in my article. I just honestly like I don't want to say the wrong one because it's like point,
Sure.
And if I'm off by like one, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's fascinating because I think it reveals a lot too of how, honestly, when we were doing that and talking with players, I think it revealed a lot to how shallowly people were thinking about what it means to play theoretically correct.
Right.
Because once you start revealing like even calculating EV is like this massive estimation game, and there's so many assumptions going into that, and so because when we would tell people like we beat Slumbot for I think 19 big blinds per 100, if I remember, 17, somewhere in there.
I had
Yeah.
I had like my win rate against Lombard was like insane.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it was. I obviously got lucky as well.
Yeah,
Obviously.
Yeah, sure.
But we did pick the number of hands ahead of time, so I didn't didn't
you
like
didn't,
randomly
you didn't cut it off.
randomly
I'm crushing
quit.
it. We're done.
Exactly. I wasn't like, and I just stacked him. I'm out. I did not hit end runs.
Yes, yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, it's crazy. It's fascinating because I think people still, I think there's a lot to still be learned about our understanding of what it means, especially pre-flop. Like a lot of people like, there's a lot of assumptions when people see a pre-flop chart and they're like, oh, this is how I should play pre-flop.
Yeah,
But there's
especially live. It's so funny. Pre-flop is like the easiest, right? Because it's pre-flop and it's solved.
Yeah.
Like we know that poker is not solved. Even heads up is not solved.
Yeah.
Not even close.
Yeah.
But now like talk about full ring and talk about tournaments and
Yes,
like
all these different stacked apps.
You're
and,
just like you're totally fucked.
Yeah.
But even pre-flop live can be just totally crazy. So a friend of mine, I think she won't mind if I share this because she tweeted about it. So yesterday she was playing in one of the WPT events at the Win, and she opened pocket tens under the gun.
Okay.
Under the gun.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got 3-bet by like the cutoff.
Okay.
Ended up calling. It was so for the poker people, we'll actually tell the hand. It was a Jack 10-8 board.
Okay.
She checked.
Yeah.
Check back. The turn, which we're already in weird land, right?
Yeah.
The turn was a brick.
Okay.
And she bet.
Yeah.
And got called, and the river was a 7. And she bet again, and the 3-better went all in. And she's like, well, what am I supposed to do? Right? How many 9s does he have in his range?
Probably more than you think.
Right. And she ended up calling, and he had 9-5.
Yeah.
And 9-5 was the 3-bet hand.
Yeah.
And that is not on any chart. I'm sorry. That is not on any bluff. Like if your bluffs, like your suited connectors, 9-5 ain't on it.
Yeah.
Like that is not, like if you're trying to range someone,
Yeah, it's
especially
like you're
under
never
the
gonna-
gun open.
Yeah, under the gun open.
Under the gun open, that's just like never.
You also have 10s, so I mean it's kind of an impossible.
Right.
Yeah, but like even when you're thinking, but yeah, I mean this is definitely a spot where if you're thinking 2 theory or trying to put someone
and
on,
you
it's
have
just
10, so you're also blocking 9-10, right?
Sure.
You're
blocking the
like,
obvious candidates.
The obvious
Yeah.
candidates. You're blocking Jack 9.
Yeah.
You're like
It could be
Well,
8. It could be Ace
yeah.
9. It could be, but still, it's
it could
just
be
like
Ace 9, but
why
why
check
in the
flop?
world? And you're not blocking Jack 9. I don't know.
Yeah. No worries. Yeah.
But yeah, it could be Ace 9, but like Ace 9, really? Is it really 3-betting it under the like?
Yeah, it
that's
is kind of
also
bizarre.
That's not an ace that's ever on a 3-bet chart
Is Ace 9 suited not a 3-bet? It might be
for an under the gun open.
maybe Ace 10 suited. I guess
I think Ace 10. I don't think. I mean, I might be wrong.
Are you opening Ace 10 off? Because if you're opening Ace 10 off from under the gun, then you're probably 3-betting Ace 9 suited, would be my guess. But if you're not opening Ace 10 off, I'm not a tournament player.
But
for
in
the record.
in a full ring, I think
You
know
just
if you're playing
started Ace Jack.
if you're playing 9-handed, I don't think. I mean, you're.
I'm not a tournament player.
Let's be honest. You're probably opening Ace 10 offsuit from under the gun, but you theoretically
probably
that's
should.
not
It's
a
just
great,
losing money. Yeah, that makes sense.
I open it.
Yeah. I open everything. No. But no, I mean, it is one of these spots where you can definitely, and that's why experience is so important. You can get into these spots where it's like, I don't need to think about your range.
Yeah.
I need to think about the odds you're bluffing here.
Yeah.
And they're nothing. And I just need to proceed as that. Like.
But you know what? I totally get what she did because like, I don't want to fold my set. Like, what the hell? Like, and why is he? How did we get here?
It's such an abstract skill too, though, because like at the same time, you don't want to make such big assumptions. Right? So it's like you're trying to do this balancing game,
That's
right?
exactly
like,
right. I don't want to be like, well, you have 0 bluffs, and so I'm going to exploitatively fold a
second set,
yeah.
like functionally second nuts. Like they probably don't have jacks at this point. Like they're not. Yeah. So it's like
they're never. Because here's the thing: they're never checking back jacks on such a.
Yeah.
Well, I'm saying never.
But
you
they
never
might.
know,
Yeah.
They might. But I'm assuming that they're not checking jacks back on such a nasty board.
Funny thing is that's funny about this is like sometimes you get in these spots and you end up calling and it's like they have pocket 8s for some reason or something crazy.
Right.
What just happened?
Right.
Like, and so it's
and
so
you stack them.
Yeah, and you stack them and it's like okay. But yeah, so it's and that's the thing is like you just have to like so much of poker is just like accepting the lack of knowledge you have in my opinion.
That's exactly right.
Like,
and learning to deal with uncertainty.
Yeah.
And that's once again, that's what my dissertation was about, but I didn't learn how to do it until I started playing poker.
Were there any like surprising intuitions? This is kind of, I'm trying to word this question right, but like what were the things that were like most, I guess this is interesting. Where did you feel your gap was the largest between what you like conceptually understood and then how it shifted to be like, oh, I experientially get this now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The funny thing is, I think the largest, because that's like where my expertise was emotions and self-control, because like I studied with the self-control guy. Like I was studying with the person who like did
that's
did
whole
all
thing.
this work, and I knew all of the techniques for exercising self-control, right? Like this is what I did.
Yeah.
Like was cooling hot emotions and I'm not, I'm not someone who's an impulsive person, like not a big risk taker. Like I don't gamble. I never played I've never played slots. I don't play any casino games. And
so, I mean, that makes sense. This would be like a particularly hot environment though for you, right?
But so I think, I thought that I would like be totally fine because motion management is what I do. I'm good at it. And so that was the biggest gap, because I think I was a little overconfident that I could manage it. And then, but you can't, because in the moment, there's just so much going on. And especially at the beginning, when I was just starting out and I had, cognitive load, right? So much to try to keep in mind. I think that it really made it difficult for me to practice what I preach. And I actually ended up getting mental game coaching as well.
From Elliot or?
No, from Jared.
Oh, Tendler. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yep. So I've just now put together that he and I have the same name. I don't know how I've done
sorry.
that.
Yeah, no, not from you, Jared.
Yeah. Well, obviously. But I've somehow never like really thought about that, because it's always Jared Tendler. And
he's wonderful. I love him.
When you said Jared, I was like, oh, that's my name. Anyway.
Yeah.
So did you
highly recommend him?
Yes.
Shout out.
Did you find that because for me, so too, like some of the trajectory was, I actually found that when I was playing quote unquote recreationally before I decided, in many ways I think I was playing better than the initial part of me trying to like be a professional. Because suddenly now there were all these like identities and like status wrapped up in performing well. And so like each decision represented so much more to me. Did you find that like as you got more, I mean, like, what were some of the feelings that you found like most difficult to deal with?
I think that at the beginning there were zero expectations, right?
Yeah. Like, you're just like
never played before.
Yeah.
And then as I got better, and like especially like after I started winning, I was like, oh shit.
Yeah. Like this could be real. Like,
it
is real. Yeah.
Or like I have to keep winning to like prove that this is real and not a fluke.
Yeah.
And so there were more expectations, and also, I like have people who like believe in me and like who like have pieces of me always like as like a like coaching exchange. And like I play for me, but I play for them too. And I really don't want to let them down.
Of course,
And I feel horrible when I'm not doing well. And like, I know they get it. Like, and I know that they, wouldn't support me if they didn't believe in me.
Yeah.
But it makes me feel like, I don't want to go through those downswings. If it were just me, I could.
Yeah.
But like, I hate feeling like I'm doing poorly for someone. Like I'm not doing well for them. Like, I lost you a lot of money this year.
Yeah, I'm really sorry.
I'm really sorry.
That's tough. I didn't think, I had never been
to
backed.
me, that's the hardest.
Yeah. I started like selling pieces of myself and things, and even with people who like, I had been a professional for a while and they were professionals, like, that they get it, but it still feels just terrible. Like it just feels awful. You're just like, I want
to make money for people. I want to repay their belief in me. And I even offer, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just thinking like one of the things that's funny is like the experience of even feeling like I can't apologize to you too much because I don't want you to think like I'm too mentally like weak or fractured by this. It's like I'm really sorry, but like I'm not that sorry.
Yeah.
But like
so I one of the people who like consistently has pieces of who now just has a piece of everything because of this occurrence where I basically, like, at that point, like, he would like take pieces of an event or not.
Yeah.
And at this particular time, like, he just didn't respond. I think he was sleeping or whatever. Anyway, I ended up he didn't have pieces my 2 biggest scores of the year. And so I ended up having a hugely positive year.
That he missed
but
out on.
losing money for him. And so I actually said, like, I want to give you money. Like, can we just pretend that you had a piece of everything? And he was like, are you insane?
Yeah.
No. He's like, imagine that this was reversed, right?
Yeah.
Imagine that
You
like
lost.
I lost and I didn't have pieces, and all of a sudden you were like, well, but it was a really big loss, so like let's imagine that you had a piece of it.
Can you shell up?
Right. He's like, you don't do that. Like he's like, okay, going forward, like we're just gonna have like a default so that this doesn't happen again. He's like, but no, like, and I really like, but I asked so like, and I genuinely meant it. Like, I was like, I was like, no, please, like, can I please give you money? Like, because I just felt really bad. But his response makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think one of the things that I get on poker players a bit for is I think they're a little bit too, I don't know how a good term for this, but like a little too rational, like a little too in the sense of like, well, if we can add all this up and this makes sense. I've given people pieces back that they bought of me because I strongly felt like I was not my play didn't represent what I thought they were buying, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And for me, they were like, but like, I'm free rolling.
Right.
And it's just like, that's not how it feels to me. Like, I felt like you agreed to like a purchase of this.
Well, that's a little different than when people like buy like a specific thing. But like if someone is just like someone who has. But I really like, I genuinely meant that offer.
Of course.
Like,
I can imagine feeling that way.
Like I really just wanted to give him money.
It does mess with your intuitions a little because some part of you feels like you should. Yeah, it's like everything in you is like, you should have a piece of this. But I mean, it is right. Like it would be ridiculous to come knocking for a piece. Like, just this was a really brutal loss. But
look, I had too much of myself in this one.
Too much I really didn't expect it. I
fired too many bullets. Look, the Colossus just got the better of me. I thought it was a $600 tournament and it turned into a $60,000 tournament. Like, we're sorry now.
That's so funny.
I call the Colossus the Colosshole. I hate that event.
The Colossus. I've never played. I played like online. And don't.
I actually did not. I haven't played for the last few years, and I've never been happier. It was such a good decision for my quality of life.
What was like? I'm curious about the mental game side of it. Things you're talking about, like your emotions and like the things that were surprising for you that came up in that. What were some of the, like you found the most useful things on like reframing or like your experience in your? Have you ever read Lisa Feldman Barrett? Yeah. Like that. I love her. I
haven't read her book, but I know her work.
Her book is amazing on emotions.
I know the studies.
Yeah, sure. I had never. So I was a big Paul Ekman guy. This is such inside baseball for people.
Yeah.
But like I was a big fan of.
He's done some like not all his work is discredited.
Yeah.
And he's very old school. And he's done. I've written about his stuff. Yeah. Like he has done some very interesting research, but some of it has not held up. Unfortunately.
Yeah. Unfortunately. Well, that's just how science goes, right?
It is how it works.
Yeah. But
he's never since we've just been talking about cheating and stuff. As far as I know, he's never done anything shady. He's totally great, very great researcher.
It was
just a different time, different era.
So Paul Ekman, for those who don't know, is like he's been researching like emotions and facial expressions for 3 decades, maybe longer, 4 decades.
No. Like let's like 6 decades.
Forever, right? He's like would be considered like one of the leading researchers in it, if not for, but like either way. So it like framed his whole thing is like universality of emotion, right? Like there's these 7 basic emotions that like all human beings express the same, and that it's non-cultural. And then like, so Lisa Feldman Barrett in that camp of like predictive, processing, that book like blew my mind because one, it made so much sense.
Right.
And it made so much intuitive sense, like on your experience, like reading this matched with my experience so much more than my understanding of, and people's understanding, like, to watch someone make a facial expression and be like, you're angry, and then be like, I didn't feel angry, and be like, you're wrong, which is how I felt about people. It's like, no, you just don't know that you're angry. Is like, that's kind of what I took back from Paul Ekman's work. So reading Lisa Feldman Barrett stuff had helped a lot. It also helped me a lot, like understand my own feelings and emotions. Anyway, getting back to you, what were some of the things that you felt like helped you mentally, like adjust to the experiences you were having in poker and like?
Honestly, it wasn't really reading anything because, like, I hate to sound like I know the stuff, but like I knew the literature, right?
Yeah.
Like there wasn't any reading I was going to do at that
Sure.
point.
Yeah.
But it was working with Jared, not you, Jared.
Jared Tendler, yeah.
And actually, you know, the reason I originally just did not think I needed coaching or mental end was because, you know, I'm a psychologist. It's what I do, and I can coach other people.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you can't coach yourself, right? Like, every psychologist has a psychologist.
Sure,
so there's a reason for that.
And it's like a singer having a voice coach, or like, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like,
And you can be like the best performance coach in the world, but you need a performance coach, right? Like you need help in what you do.
Yeah.
And Jared just made me like sit down and like do the hard work that I didn't think I needed to do. I was like, yeah, I know this. I don't need to like make a spreadsheet where I talk about like what tilts me and how I'm going to respond to it. Then I was like, oh no, he was right. I needed to make a spreadsheet, right? Like
that's that's fascinating. I didn't know. I'm familiar like loosely with. I think I've read his book, but like not like the specific things that he does. You have a spreadsheet of like what you did. One of the things you did. Yeah.
Well, yeah. One of the things I did was basically like this big Excel spreadsheet where I would identify any situation where I tilted, like what the trigger was, how I reacted, and then try to figure out, okay, next time something like this happens, what am I going to do? Like try to actually think through those pathways. And it was, you know, and I knew the psychology work before that. So Peter Gollwitzer at NYU has all of this work on implementation intentions and kind of if-thens, where it helps you to think through things ahead of time to have the correct intention when it comes to actually implementing the action and reaching the goal that you want to reach. So classic example, like I want to go to the gym. Right. So, okay. So you think of all of the things that will stop you from going to the gym. Like, oh, it's raining. I'm too tired. Like I woke up too late. Like
gyms are stupid.
Yeah, exactly. And then you say, okay, if it's raining, then I will put on my fucking, raincoat and I will go to the gym through the rain, and then I'll reward myself like afterwards, whatever.
Yeah.
If I slept late and I'm too tired, then I will, take a cold shower and go to the gym because it will wake me up, right? Like and it's basically the thing is you're always saying like, then I go to the gym. But like if my gym buddy is can't make it today, then I call someone else, my backup gym buddy, and we go together, right?
Sure.
So you actually make if-then statements where you write out all of the things that can stand in your way, and then you do it.
I felt pain for the backup gym buddy. Why is he not good enough to be primary gym buddy?
Just have to know.
I'm always getting called at the last minute. Just
so it's really so that's a really useful and powerful way of kind of
interesting,
making sure that you get shit done, right?
Well, you kind of have a plan ahead of time.
Exactly.
Right? That's a big thing.
And that's the big thing about poker, is that because it's such a hot situation, unless you think through how you're going to act ahead of time in that situation, when you're in that situation, you will never be able to implement it.
Yeah.
Because when you're in the hot situation, it's already too late. So you have to have a game plan. So you need to kind of have that self-awareness.
For so many people, I think it's so painful to even think about, you know, like...
well, you have to be very humble. You have to say, like, I suck, right? Like, and I need help. And I still, like, I suck, and I need help. I still feel that way. But yeah, so if you don't do that work, like you're going to drown. You're not going to be able to do it in the moment. So now making our conversation go full circle to what we were talking about at the beginning of mindfulness. Yeah. Mindfulness isn't just paying attention to the world and observing the world. It's learning how to pay attention to yourself. Yeah. And learning how to be self-aware and learning how to read the cues that your own body is constantly giving you.
Yeah, definitely.
And so that is something that is hugely important in poker.
Yeah.
You need to be aware of other people, but you need to be aware of yourself. You need to be aware of the things that you do wrong.
It's fascinating. Some of the research I've been reading on creativity is showing that a big difference between like quote unquote creative people is sort of how your attention shifts in day-to-day life and when you're in a moment of needing creativity. And they were showing that like people who are less creative
their attention is very internal, and then in moments under like where it's sort of being called on them to solve like insight problems or difficult problems, their attention goes very external, and so like people are looking for solutions outside, whereas more creative people, their attention rests more naturally outside of them, and then the moment of creative problem solving, their attention comes more inward. And I thought that was like a very fascinating distinction, and maps with my experience too. Like,
I don't know if that's accurate, but it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I was reading it about, it's in some of Ian McGillichrist's book, The Matter with Things. He was talking about that. He has like a bunch of references there for where they did that. But when I think about my own experience,
by the way, what I meant was, if I didn't know if it was accurate, whenever you do any sort of creativity research or whenever anyone tries to generalize from it, it's usually wrong.
Yeah,
because creativity is so, like, there's so much individual difference.
It's also a difficult thing to define.
Yeah, and it's a difficult thing to define, and it's a really, really difficult thing to study.
Yeah.
So I'm always very, like, I would just put big asterisks on all of it.
In my own experience, it feels relatively true. Like I find when I'm collapsing around like anxiety or something in my moment-to-moment life or something like, and I'm very internal, like locked in my head. And then in a moment of like, I think it depends on like where you sort of see the problem to be. Like I found that when I'm playing poker, when I'm really present and engaged and I'm having difficult experiences, I'm with those experiences and sort of coming from a problem-solving standpoint of that. Whereas if my attention's outside, I'm overlooking a lot of the data of what is trying to produce a potentially creative insight. So it definitely maps with like what I feel is true in those moments. But obviously like every person's going to be different. Random question. Have you ever sat silent retreat? I was just curious. No? Okay.
I do yoga and meditation every day.
Yeah, amazing.
Never
highly recommend it.
Never done a silent retreat.
I was I'm just curious. Oh, but we have to do 2 truths and a lie. Yeah, so are you ready? This is like our test of bluffing. It says, okay, so how this works, we don't really know how this works yet, but we're trying it out. We're going to do 2 truths and a lie. Ooh, I also have a question that I'm asking everybody.
Okay.
Which is, let me do this one first.
All right.
Who is the hottest Phil in poker?
Who's the hottest? Well, I mean, obviously Phil Galfond, because I love him.
But you're biased.
I do.
I think
I am biased, and I love the Galfond so much. Farah's amazing. Spencer's amazing. Like, I'm sorry, I have to.
Well,
I'm just 100% biased. And
what percent of people do you think will say Phil Lock?
I mean, if I that don't put me on the spot there. I can't answer that.
I think my money is on Ivy being the front runner. I love Phil too, but he's been putting a lot of work into his hair lately. I feel Phil Galfond.
Yeah, absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, look, like probably like if we're talking objectively, like it's hard to go wrong with Phil Ivey, but like
he's a front runner for sure.
But I'm not objective, and I think that Galfond's amazing.
Who is?
So
all right,
so let's
Phil Galfond, everybody. Okay, so cool. So. Now let's do don't put me on the spot with Phil Locke. We'll just edit that part out. Okay. I'm gonna pull up a timer because the way we're gonna do this is you're gonna say your 2 truths and a lie. I'll say my 2 truths and a lie. So we're gonna have 2 minutes to question each other on the 3 things we say, if that makes sense. And then we're both gonna guess what we're lying about. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay, let's see your best poker face. All right, so so you go first. Tell me your 2 truths and a lie in whatever order.
All right. So first, I am incredibly scared of flying, even though I fly all the time.
Okay.
So like it's something that has been the case since I was little.
You and K-Rab both.
Yeah, and every single time that like I get on a plane, I'm like, there's a chance I'm going to crash.
Okay.
And I fly literally all the time, and like I would think it would get better with time, but it hasn't.
If this is a lie,
so
you're one of the best. Continue.
All right. So number 2, when I play poker and I'm listening to music, I listen almost exclusively to rap. So like not over 90%. And so it's everything from like old school rap, like even going back to the 80s and like Death Row, kind of all their original acts, but to drill. So like modern stuff. Drill's pretty damn violent, but like that is my playlist. And anytime you take off my headphones and put them on, like 99 times, that's what it's going to be. Yeah.
Love it.
And the final one is that last year for Hanukkah, I spent the second night of Hanukkah with Natalie Portman, who I've known since college. She also studied psychology at Harvard. And
I know that's true.
She was a few years ahead of me, but we met in a psych class, and so we've known each other for a long time. And
all right, these are good. Okay. My
Enough excuses.
My father is a doomsday prepper.
Okay.
Okay. We'll say one time when I was about 14, I peed in a cup and threw it out a window, and it got sucked in the window behind me and went all over my friends. Okay.
That's really gross.
That's really gross. And then I've never eaten a pineapple. Yes. So we'll go with those 3.
All right.
Yes. Yeah, that sounds good. So you can question.
You and I had very different approaches to this.
Very different approaches, yeah.
All right.
Well, that's what part of me is like. I had some good ones that were more like longer stories like yours. But okay, so now who should you can question me first because you went first.
Oh, well, I don't care.
Okay, I'm going to question you first then.
That's fine.
Okay, I'm going to get 2 minutes. So 2 minutes on the clock.
All right.
What did you and Natalie Portman do?
We cooked. So she actually has a series that she does on Instagram where she prepares meals, and she's vegan. So it's a really interesting way of kind of learning about different ways.
Do you know her birthday?
No, I don't actually.
Okay.
I believe
favorite rap song?
My favorite rap song?
Yeah.
Well, I don't have a favorite rap song. I have favorite artists, but in my Spotify Wrapped for the year, my top artist was Bone Thugs and Harmony.
Okay. And then, okay, wait, what was your first one? Your first one was, you're scared of flying.
Mm-hmm.
Do you drink on flights ever?
No, I can't drink on flights because I have very low blood pressure and I also get migraines.
Fair. Ooh, man, I'm trying to think about how I can determine the truthfulness of the flying one. What's your coping mechanism for flying? Nothing? Just fly?
Pray.
Pray?
I'm an atheist.
Pray to somebody.
just hope for the best.
Hope for the best? Do you try to limit the amount that you fly because of this?
No.
No?
I can't. My
if
career
not
is
rap,
flying.
what would you listen to?
If not rap, I would probably listen to jazz.
Wow.
We're talking about playing poker, right? What's a good soundtrack for poker?
I feel like rap might give me 2 amps. Okay. I feel like
But jazz is good. Jazz is mellow. Like, I love jazz. I took a jazz course in college.
How often do you see Natalie?
Not often at all anymore. I mean, she is ridiculously busy.
How close? Like, how close are you guys?
We're not that close.
Not that close. But
No,
you said you spent last Christmas with her, or last?
No, Hanukkah.
Hanukkah.
I'm sorry.
Look, okay, totally different. Last Hanukkah. Is she Jewish?
She is.
Are you?
Yes.
There you go. There it all comes together.
Her last name is not actually Portman.
What is it?
I don't know if I should say on air, but I think it's
fair.
probably
Okay.
I think it's probably common knowledge, but it's Hirschlag, but yeah.
Okay, well, there we go. All right.
But we might need to edit that out.
That is a less good actress name.
It is.
Natalie Hirschlag.
But Portman is actually a name that's in her family. So it wasn't like totally taken out of nowhere.
I'm going to let you question, and then I'm going to say which one I think is a lie.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool. So by doomsday prepper, like, what do you mean? Like, what does that actually entail?
About as much as you would think. He has lots of guns, many barrels of water stored up in case of an emergency. He has...
Does he live off the grid?
Ish.
Where
Not
are you
completely
from?
off the grid. Colorado. Yes.
And he lives in Colorado?
He lives in Colorado. He lives out in the forests of Colorado, and he lives on a little ranch. Like a little ranch. They have like their own animals.
Why were you peeing into a cup?
Because I had to pee. What do you mean? Oh, so okay.
You're in a car. Like,
yeah,
you
so
could
we're in a
just
car?
stop. You're a dude. You could just pee on the side of the road.
When I was young, I was very bad at understanding when I had to go to the bathroom. So we had just come from somewhere, and we were driving to go snowboarding for my birthday. And so we're on kind of like a mountainy road. So like, and then it was just, it used to be this thing where it's like I didn't have to pee, suddenly I had to pee immediately. And it's like, I need to pee now. And it was like, we have nowhere to stop. We're on a slightly busy but winding mountain road.
To go snowboarding.
And
I have no more questions. That's your lie.
That's my lie? Oh my gosh, you're so good. That is my lie. Why? How did you know?
Snowboarding, it's fucking freezing. There's no way the back window's open as well.
You know what's funny? That did happen though. That did happen. It just wasn't me. It was my brother.
Well,
but there you go. Yeah, but that did happen. I was in the back though. I got
anyway,
peed on.
It was not.
I'm going scared of flying is your lie.
Nope.
Is rap music?
Nope.
Is Natalie Portman?
Yep.
Oh my gosh. I thought Natalie Portman. I was like, no, she did go to college.
We did go to college together. We did take psych together. We are aware of each other. We did not spend Hanukkah together.
Oh, I thought that was just too good of a, like, I was like, no, I'm buying Natalie.
See?
I should have just went with the statistical odds. Like, rap music is likely, flying is likely. Natalie Portman's not that likely. Man.
I win.
I'm terrible at this game. I can't beat anybody at this game.
And now I've used such good ones. This was a good showing by me.
Man, you didn't even think about pineapple. You just thought instantly the story doesn't add up.
I knew I could see the, like.
You know what's funny is I also didn't really, when you were asking me this so long ago, I was like, why couldn't we stop and pee? I was like, I don't really know. I don't really remember, so I'm just like trying to, I think that was the reason why, but there you go.
All right. Well, this was fun.
This was fun. Thank you so much. All right. Yeah.